Thanks for joining us today. I'm Gabe Garish, owner of Backwoods Pursuit, and today we are looking at rangefinders. If you're looking for the best rangefinder for hunting, that is what this project has been about. Looking for honest backcountry gear reviews? Well, you're in the right place, because here at Backwoods Pursuit, that's what we do. We bring you gear reviews based on our use and actual field testing of the gear. Stick around for our good, bad, and ugly segment where we go over what was good about the product and what maybe could be better. Let's jump into this review. All right, for this review, we're going to dive into these 5 rangefinders here. These are all fantastic rangefinders. We're going to get into the details on them. We've got the SIG Kilo 2400 ABS. We have got the Bushnell Nitro 1800. We've got the GPO Rangetracker 1800. We've got the Vortex Razor 4000. And then we've also got the Leupold RX Full Draw 4. These are all awesome rangefinders with some of our different purposes here. But I will put a link to all of these down in the description for you, so please go check them out if any of them look interesting to you, or of course drop comments down in the comment section. We'll answer those for you. But let's dive into each of these rangefinders. First up, let's look at the eyepieces here. This is the GPO Rangetracker 1800, and you can see there's no adjustment for eye relief. It's just a fixed feature there, whereas with the SIG, you've got an adjustable eye relief here. Which is nice. The Bushnell here, no adjustment on the eye relief there. Vortex Razor here, you do have an adjustment there for the eye relief, and that's real nice. And then with the Leupold, you do not either. It's just a kind of a flexible rubber right there on the eye relief. Next feature we'll look at here is the weight of each of these. There's actually a surprising difference between each of these here. We have the Leupold RX 4, the Full Draw 4. This guy weighs in at, I'm gonna use my notes here, weighs in at 7.4 ounces, fairly lightweight. The Vortex Razor HD 4000 is by quite a bit the heaviest and largest, bulkiest of the bunch here. This guy weighs in at 9.9 ounces. Bushnell Nitro 1800 is super light. It's the second lightest of the bunch here. This is 5.8 ounces, nice and lightweight that way. SIG Kilo 2400 ABS comes in at, let's see, 7.9 ounces for the SIG Kilo. And then the GPO is the lightest of the bunch at 5.6 ounces. It's the most compact and lightest. Really nice that way, really easy to fit in your pack. So that's the weights of each of these. Price point on Leupold here is $550. These are just prices I found out on Amazon and in various places. So $550 here. The Vortex, it comes in at $500. The Bushnell Nitro 1800 comes in at $350. The SIG Kilo comes in at about $1,300, $1,250, $1,300, depending on where you find it. And the GPO comes in at $400. Getting into the size differences between these, you can tell here that the Vortex is by quite a bit the biggest of the bunch, and the GPO Rangetracker is by a fair amount the smallest of the bunch, and smallest and lightest. So if size is something that makes a difference for you, and the weight of these, certainly this GPO is a great option. It is a little more limited in some of its functions than some of the others, but we'll get into that now. Now, as far as the optics of each of these, they all provide you with some fantastic optics. For me, after looking through all of these, I would say the best optically of this bunch was probably the Vortex Razor HD 4000. It's just fantastic. It's one of the better optically performing rangefinders that I've used and have been able to test. Not to say that any of these others were slouches by any stretch. This Leupold RX4 or Full Draw 4 is awesome as well. It's right there with the Vortex Razor. Performs very, very similarly. The other three here are very, very good. The Bushnell, the SIG, and the GPO are excellent optically. Next up, let's look at the displays of these rangefinders. Of these 5, 2 of them have black displays. That's the GPO and the Bushnell. And the SIG, the Vortex, and the Leupold all have red displays. I prefer a red display. I found them to work the best, particularly in low light, but that's not the only factor. The other factor here is the OLED and adaptive displays. They certainly don't all have that, but man, it sure makes a huge difference. The one that really has the adaptive display and the red is the SIG Kilo 2400 ABS. This thing is awesome in the display. The functionality is real crisp and fast ranging speed and whatnot, but particularly because of the OLED adaptive display, it adjusts the brightness of the display all on its own, depending on the brightness that is outside when you're ranging. So super useful when you're going into dark timber versus out on the bright hillside. You don't have to mess with any buttons to make that change. Whereas that was the real downside, even though I absolutely loved the Leupold and the Vortex for their red displays as well. They were not adaptive to the lights and the ambient light outside. If they would have been, they would be right there with that SIG in the way that they function. But because they didn't, you had to make a change here and there if you happen to find that the display was too bright or not bright enough from morning to midday to dawn or to late at night, that sort of thing. So something to consider. These two, the GPO and the Bushnell, both have black displays, like I mentioned, versus those all have the red. These three have the red displays. And they worked really well, and they did adjust to some degree with the light. There's, I think it's HLCD display on this and an OLED display on the Nitro. They both worked really well, but they were black, so it does make it a little more difficult when light is getting lower, particularly early morning, late at night, but worked really well also, even though they were black displays. Now, next up, let's look at how the displays functioned as far as being cluttered or clear, one set of yardage display or two, that sort of thing. Really, all of these offered a nice clean display, with the one exception, the probably one that had the busiest display was the Bushnell Nitro here. You have two ranges, both the line of sight and the angle range compensated number there. It's something you have to get used to. It's real easy to look at a number, the big main number that you see through this, and if you're not used to it, you might look at that number on a steep shot and shoot the wrong yardage. So you have to be aware of that when you're getting used to the Bushnell here, that there are two, and you want to look at the angle range compensated, particularly if you're using it for bow hunting. When you go to the longer ranges for your ballistics and whatnot, which this does do, which is awesome, you don't have to worry about that. You just have the one number. But in bow mode, that gives you two numbers, which can be confusing if you're not used to it. All the rest of these just give you one number, which is my preferred display. You don't have to think about or wonder if you're shooting the right yardage display or yardage distance when you're hitting that range. Super nice that way. They're all nice and clean. Gives you a lot of different options that way. One thing that is nice about the Bushnell here too is that you have three different reticle options. Same with the Leupold. You have a couple of different reticle options that you can pick from. And I think, if I remember correctly, the Razor might have that as well, but the SIG just has the one that I can recall. If I'm wrong there, let me know in the comments, but if I'm remembering correctly, they just have the one option, and the GPO just has the one option as far as the reticle that you're looking for when you're ranging your target. Next up, let's talk about the ranging speeds of each of these rangefinders. They are all such a far cry from some of the previous models that I've tested. Some of the earlier Vortex models were pretty slow. They took a little bit to return that range, but all of these were super fast, almost an instantaneous return of the yardage. Now there's a couple exceptions here that I wanted to mention, and a couple standouts as far as the way they perform versus what they stated they would perform. First being the GPO here, really. This thing states that it's gonna give you a yardage of 1,800 yards, and what I was able to get out of this just offhand, I was able to get out to 2,200 yards with this easily. I was shocked when I started playing around with this out at the archery range and ranging across the hill. That was just on a grassy hillside. Awesome performer there. They just performed well beyond what it even stated. The Bushnell Nitro, again, performed out to the 1,800 yards that it says it will with ease. And this performed even in temperatures of minus 15 degrees. It was giving me those long ranges. Super impressed with the way this performed. Let's look next at the SIG Kilo here. 2,400 is what they give you as the range that it'll go out to. I was able to easily get 2,200 to 2,300 offhand without even putting it on the tripod adapter that they give you. So really performed well, and that nice small circle, the reticle that you get with this, makes it easier to get your yardages and your ranges because of that. The Vortex here, this is Vortex Razor 4000 or Razor HD 4000. This one performed well out to about 1,800 yards offhand and give you good consistent readings and fairly quick. But once I got past 1,800 yards, I had a hard time getting any kind of a return on a range on this, even in the ELR mode. And it got really slow past 1,800 yards. It would take 1.5 to 2 seconds to return that yardage, even in that ELR mode. So a little bit disappointed in the range that I was able to get out of this, given the price point. And I really wanted this to perform well because it was optically, or is optically, amazing in the way that it performs. The display is a little bit bulky, a little bit thick in the reticle, so I wish it was a little bit smaller that way. It makes those longer ranges when you're ranging something a long ways away. It makes it a little harder to get a precise range. And then the slower range at past 1,800 yards was a little bit of a bummer on that. Now the Leupold, this is meant for bow hunters. It's not meant to be a long range device. So if you're not someone that needs anything past 700, 800, 900 yards, this will be just fine. I was able to get that pretty easily offhand with this, but it's not designed to do much more than that. It's a bow hunter's dream is what this is, and we'll go over some of the details on that in a second. But that's really what this was. The red display and the clarity of the optics on this is fantastic. I loved this rangefinder. Next up, let's look at what these things give you internally. First up, the SIG and the Bushnell Nitro 1800. These two are designed for your long range shooting. So they're obviously different than the Leupold, which is designed for bow hunting, but they're really designed for your long range hunting. Really the Vortex is as well, but what differentiates these two is that you have the applied ballistics integrated into these, so you can get your holdovers, your MOA, your MIL, whatever you're using, and you can link that to your app on your phone, create your rifle profiles. I'm not going to go deep into the details on what those offer, but they offer a similar functionality as far as being able to integrate your long range shooting ballistics into these. They're fantastic that way, and again, the ranges they provide and the speed that they provide at those longer distances really are awesome with these two, and really crisp optics with both of these. Not quite as good as the Leupold and the Vortex, like I mentioned, but really, really good optics. Give you plenty of crisp picture there for when you're doing your ranging. The GPO here is just an all-around great rangefinder. It gives you, all of these give you angle range compensated for bow usage. That's an awesome thing that most rangefinders include anymore. Same with this one, it gives you a nice crisp display, just the yardage, the reticle, and the angle at which you're ranging. So if it's a 10-degree downhill shot or uphill, it gives you that, but it's still nice and clean. Again, like I mentioned, you can still get out to 2,200 yards offhand is what I was able to get with this. So fantastic that way. A great all-around rangefinder, really good optics. I just wish I had a red display really, and a little bit thinner reticle on that guy. The Vortex here gives you the number of modes. It's really easy. You've got, on this one, you got two buttons, a measure button here, and then a menu button. You can click through on this second button here from the first to the last to the ELR modes just by clicking that button real easily, whereas most rangefinders you have to go and hold down a menu button for 2 seconds and then cycle through everything, so which is a pain to do in the field. That's awesome about the Ranger or Razor here, where you can just cycle through that really, really quick and easy on the fly if you need to. Again, fantastic optics, really, really crisp display with really high contrast image, one of the better images I've looked at through a rangefinder. Now on to the Leupold. Like I mentioned, this is a bow hunter's dream. It gives you an awesome optical picture. It's right there with the Razor. The two best of this group were these two in the optics department. Nice clean display, but what this offers you is a functionality that allows you to see through the rangefinder what your arrow flight is going to be like once you put in your arrow data, your arrow weight, your peep height, a couple of data points. You range your subject or whatever you're looking at, and it'll tell you the arc, the high point of your arrow flight. And it works because I used it all throughout archery season, found myself using this a ton to range an object, and if there's a branch hanging over, I would see if the high point of my arrow was going to touch that branch, or if I had clearance for that shot if an animal were to come through. Really, really useful, awesome new technology from Leupold. Combine that with the optics, and it's just a fantastic rangefinder. It really, only thing that left me wanting on this was that adaptive display. It's red. I do wish I had a little bit thinner of a reticle, but bow hunting and when you're not long range shooting, it's really not that big of a deal with a thicker display or thicker reticle. I just wish I had that adaptive display so you didn't have to give up a little bit of early light to to then not be able to see it very well during the day, to then back being where you want it to be in the evening, that sort of thing. So that's really the only difference on that one that I wanted to see. Last up here, let's go through our good, bad, and ugly section. This is where I'm going to go through what I liked and didn't like about each of these after using them all for the last year or so. They all have their pros and cons here, so let's dive into that. The SIG was just flat out an awesome rangefinder. Loved the adjustability here on the eye relief. I love the small reticle that this offers you. It gives you, if you're someone who likes to long range shoot, you've got covered. If you like bow hunting, which I like to do a little bit of both, but I'm not certainly an extreme long range shooter. I like to just dabble with a little bit. Gives you everything you need for that, as well as all the functionalities you need as a bow hunter in a simple display, crisp display, nice optics. Those are the good things. The things I would change on this, really just a couple. The optics could be a little bit better, particularly for the price point. Again, they're not bad by any stretch, but they could be a little bit better. And really, that's the main thing about this, is the price point. This thing comes in at around 1,300 bucks, so it's a huge investment. But if you like to do both spectrums of hunting, this is an awesome, awesome piece of equipment to have. Next up, the Bushnell Nitro 1800. This is one that again has you covered from bow hunting all the way to long range shooting if you like to do either of those. Integrated ballistics through the app, the Applied Ballistics app from Bushnell. You just download your rifle ballistics onto this after you input that data into the app, and you're set to go. You can switch between rifles even during a hunt if you need to, but awesome that way. Nice crisp display. The new displays from Bushnell are fantastic. They're super bright, nice and clear, and really a huge step in quality for Bushnell from the last one that I had years ago. Really, really impressed with this. What could be better? I didn't care for having two ranges in bow mode, and since I do a lot of bow hunting, you know, it's something you get used to, having to read the bottom, the smaller range rather than big display, and I couldn't figure out a way to change that. I don't think that it has the option to do that. I liked how you could have multiple reticles through this as well, but the display was just a little bit on the busy side for me personally, something you get used to. Then I wish I had a red display as well. It comes with a black OLED display. Really nice and crisp, but again, I wish it was black. That helps with your low light situations when particularly it's dark out or close to and you need to get a range. So awesome rangefinder there. At a great price point, especially for everything you get in this. It gives you just a ton for that 350 bucks. Next up, the GPO Rangetracker 1800. I was really, really impressed with this. It performed well beyond what the stated range was. Again, out to 2,200 yards on something that said it would go over 1,800, but it went way over 1,800. Price point about 400 bucks right there. It doesn't have any of the applied ballistics, so if you like to get into that long range shooting or be able to integrate that into your rangefinder, this is not the one for you necessarily, but it does give you all those ranges way out there, and it gives you the angle range compensated, so it's a fantastic all-around rangefinder at a great price and really, really good optics. I was really impressed with the optics of this because I didn't know what to expect from GPO. It's not a brand that I've worked with before to test out, so I was really impressed with this. Nice and small, compact. I love that about it. Loved the ranging speed. Even out at that 2,200 yards, it was fast. Returned a fast range for me. Was really impressed with that. The size and the weight is awesome. What I didn't like was, of course, the black display. Again, maybe that's just my personal preference, but I really like the red display and I really like the OLED adaptive display, and this didn't have that. It's still, again, really nice and crisp, and the black display does kind of change a bit with the changing light conditions. The black is more black or less black, kind of the same as the Bushnell as the light conditions change, so that does help certainly. But I like that OLED adaptive display that the SIG offers. It's just awesome. Once you've used that, it's hard to go back to something else that doesn't have that, but that's really what I would change with this. Price point's pretty good. Not having the ability that the Nitro has with some of those applied ballistics and be just 50 bucks more. The price point's right in there, especially for what you get, but just a really nice rangefinder here from GPO. I was really impressed with that. Next up, the Vortex Razor HD 4000. This thing is just optically incredible. Fantastic display, nice and crisp and clear, easy functionality going between your methods. That's some of the things I loved about this. I loved the ability to adjust the eye relief, whereas the GPO and the Bushnell didn't have that. Forgot to mention that, which is something that I wish would be different there. But you know, not a huge deal. Rangefinders are not something that eye relief is a big deal about, and you kind of pay for that in the weight and the size of the Vortex here. It's built like a tank. It's not like the GPO or the Bushnell here. They feel a little more plasticky on the outside, whereas the Vortex here is just, it's built like a tank. It's I don't know what the housing is made of. I believe it's some sort of metal or magnesium alloy, something like that, but it feels like it's just super sturdy. It's big, bulky, that sort of thing, so that's kind of a bummer, but really, really functional. Again, things I didn't like about this, the display is not adaptive, and I was just really bummed that it didn't have an adaptive OLED display, because the picture is so amazing out of this. One other thing on this is the price point being what it is. You know, it's higher priced, coming in at $550 on the market, right around their average. So because of that price point, not having an OLED adaptive display, and not hitting the ranges that they said that it would, as far as the 4,000 or anywhere close to that, it was kind of a little bit of a bummer. But you know, you get a fantastic rangefinder here. One downside I did want to mention to this, and it could have just been the model that I had, the test model that I had. I had an issue with it in cold weather. When I was out turkey hunting in the spring, I couldn't, or had a big trouble getting any ranges, even short yardage ranges, when it got down below freezing. You'd kind of have to warm it up, and it would kind of play with it a little bit, and then it would start working again. So I sent it back in to Vortex, and of course their warranty is awesome, so they took care of it. They sent me another one. I didn't have an issue with the replacement. So for whatever that's worth, wanted to mention it just so you know. That was part of my testing. It performed really, really well in the snow, though. If it was working, got it working. I had a situation with this where it was about 700-yard visibility and thick snow. It was just a snowstorm. I was able to range out to 650 yards with this in a snowstorm. So I was really impressed with that and the ability of what this was able to do even in poor conditions of that snowstorm. So that's the Vortex Razor HD. I keep saying Ranger, but that's a Razor HD. Last up, the Leupold RX Full Draw 4. This was definitely one of my favorites, using it during archery season. I loved the new technology that Leupold brought out, to giving you the high point of your arrow flight. It's super useful. I didn't know if it'd be that useful when I saw it. I was like, maybe that's a gimmick, maybe that will be useful. But I can say I found myself using it all the time to check clearance for my arrow when we were doing setups, particularly setups for elk hunting, you know, calling situations, that sort of thing. Love the red display. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit thick, but it's not bad given that it's primarily an archery rangefinder. The optics are incredible on this. Fast ranging, really didn't have any complaints. The size is great, the grip is great. It's built like a tank as well, and the weight being just under 8 ounces is really nice. It's kind of in between, and not quite as light as some of them, but lighter than others. So really liked it all the way around. Again, the adaptive OLED display, adaptive to the light, is something I wish this had. And the price point is a little bit on the high side, but you know, you get a really, really nice rangefinder in this here for what you're getting. It's a bow hunting rangefinder that can also double as something you use for rifle hunting, as long as you're not wanting the applied ballistics or those features in a rangefinder. So that's the Leupold RX Full Draw 4. So that's a rundown of these 5 rangefinders. I'd love to get your thoughts, opinions, experiences with any of these. Drop a comment down in the comment section, and we'll answer every single one of them for you. If we can help point you in the right direction towards any one of these, we'll certainly do so and answer those questions. Just drop that down in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to catch our upcoming videos. Really appreciate that. It helps keep the channel going. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.